guys, what's going on? Chris here with Shughead Gaming, bringing you my review for In Death Unchained, developed and published by Superbright. And while this is currently available on various PCVR platforms, as well as the PlayStation VR, this review will be focused on the newly released Quest version. In Death released July 23rd, 2020 for an estimated price of $25. Of course, that depends on your region. In Death, created exclusively for VR but revamped now for the Quest, is a roguelite, not rogue-like, shooter set in the godless afterlife. Battle through procedurally generated levels and dungeons in intense range combat, coupled with a unique locomotion system perfectly attuned to your fighting style. In Death is a very highly rated game coming from the PCVR and PSVR platforms, but now with development being handled by Superbright, we now get the Quest version. Let's find out if it stacks up. As always guys, if you like this video, please hit that like button. It not only helps the channel, but VR gaming as a whole. And if you'd like to see more VR content from me, please consider subscribing. And for video updates, hit that bell icon. And of course, if you want more VR news and info, check Shughead Gaming out on Twitter and Facebook. Let's kick things off with a look at graphics. In Death is a nice looking game, plain and simple, and at times to a level we rarely see on the Quest, unless it's coming from a large studio or backed by Oculus in one way or another. So I was pleasantly stunned when first stepping into the dreamlike medieval world of In Death. In Death Unchained, with its procedurally generated levels up in the clouds and down in the depths of the dungeons, has its own unique vibe. However, In Death also borrows heavily from the Dark Souls gothic medieval aesthetic in the best way possible, creating a slightly spooky, foreboding yet intriguing world. In Death's draw distance is impressive in the headset considering the limited power of the Quest, and especially when taking into consideration its attempt to go for a more realistic look. A graduated texture fade-in is used here to try to keep everything looking decent when up close and reducing the detail as you look off. It is noticeable, especially when walking, but it was rarely distracting as I spent most of my time either looking for that precious headshot or teleporting like a madman to find some cover or an empty rooftop. And of course, concessions needed to be made to bring the scale and quality of In Death to the Quest. Most noticeably and impactful to gameplay is a significant reduction in that draw distance when compared to other versions. This is hidden to some degree by using heavy fog and darkness to hide the Quest's limitations. And it's honestly no big surprise given the demands the game puts on the hardware, but newcomer Superbright makes the best of it by keeping every enemy visible that might be in range. Sometimes this may mean you're firing at silhouettes in the fog, but Superbright has managed to keep the core gameplay here intact. When ported to the PSVR, In Death remains surprisingly faithful to the PC version, albeit with a lower resolution and some limited effects. Not surprisingly, the Quest sees a similar reduction in the visuals from that of the PSVR version. Lower textured assets can be seen throughout, including a reduction in lighting, shadow, and particle effects. Nothing here is game-breaking, but the Quest version does suffer slightly in the immersion department because of this. Now, I don't mean to get too down on the visuals here, as the game is still ambitious and gorgeous in a way we rarely see on the Quest, and players who have never played prior versions are likely to never miss what they haven't seen. Enemy NPCs again borrowed heavily from the Souls series playbook animate well, and at times look amazing from either far away or up close as they lunge at your face. As was also the case on the PSVR port, the lighting engine doesn't appear to be very robust or dynamic, with much of the lighting appearing to be baked in. As a result, parts of the levels are usually dimly lit or bright, with very little happening in between, which doesn't help the slightly generic and repetitive nature inherent with procedurally generated environments. Thankfully, the sameness felt with the procedurally generated environments is offset by Superbright including an additional level to the original 2. This new addition, the Abyss, from what I played, is very much a nighttime riff on the first level Sanctuary, but it does add variety nonetheless. All in all, In Death Unchained certainly makes some visual concessions to work on the Quest, but my critical nature aside, the game still shines on the Quest, confidently bringing the In Death experience to the Quest without impacting gameplay. Sound is up next. The comparisons continue with the Dark Souls series as we look at the sound mix. With its Gregorian chant musical score running throughout and the grunts and groans of enemy soldiers taken right out of the Souls playbook, In Death definitely fills the soundscape with the same medieval gothic vibes the graphics bring visually. 3D audio here is often good, but seems spotty at times, with the sound of arrows zipping by my head sounding great, but too often lacking enough directional cues to clue me in on where an attack originated from. This is made even more prevalent here on the Quest due to the lower draw distance, resulting in a few more surprise attacks. In addition, the game seems to have an occasional habit of simply not registering a hit with the associated sound, producing such things as silent headshots and block shots simply not making an impact on my shield. These issues weren't on the PC or PSVR version, so I'm confident this will be rectified in a future patch. Outside of these issues, the sound effects are top-notch and really complement the quality we see on the visual side of things. I simply never tired of the bow release and impact sounds when firing off arrows into an enemy's head. However, I found it interesting that Superbright chose to change some of the original sound effects, with the changes simply being left to preference, I guess. Wanting more is always a good thing, but here it would definitely have helped with the Groundhog Day effect roguelite games, in death included, tend to fall victim to. And that brings us to gameplay. Roguelite games, with their penchant for procedurally generated levels and their ingrained nature of try, fail, repeat, often do suffer from a bit of the previously mentioned Groundhog Day effect, or video game deja vu if you will. In Death, Unchained is no exception, and like the fantastic VR game, the persistence, its style may not be for everyone. With limited visual variety and a rinse and repeat game loop, I fear monotony could set in for some, and I feared it would for me as well, but holy crap, this game got its claws in me, and it quickly became one of my favorite VR games all over again, after countless hours spent on the PSVR version. The premise is a simple tried and true game loop inspired by classic roguelike dungeon crawlers. In Death pays homage to this merciless genre favored by hardcore gamers and those who love the challenge found in the more recent Souls-like games. Each procedurally generated run is randomly generated, with unique map layouts, enemy placements, as well as loot spawn points. Game progression is driven by an achievement system that persists across each run and scales the difficulty level of the game in conjunction with your mastery of it. Each new life sees you begin anew in a world, with your bow or eventually unlocked crossbow, and nothing but the learned experience of deaths from before. Locomotion in Death tries to bring some innovation to the VR table with the creative use of the teleportation feature. Here, teleportation is controlled by that of a teleportation arrow and is less of a comfort setting and more of a combat tactic. For once I realized I was able to pop in and out of combat, then quickly shoot up onto a roof for the high ground, I found the optional smooth movement to be less and less preferred and slow. This, when combined with the teleport shard for quick and dirty fallbacks and dodges, and the movement system begins to become second nature. Those familiar with the teleport shard will notice that it has been changed here now, only allowing quick dodge-like movements, as opposed to the previous style that let players toss it like a stick for a quick distance hop when the arrow mechanic was simply too slow. I certainly missed this, and not sure I approve, but it certainly makes a tough game even harder. In addition, you are armed with your trusty shield, which becomes absolutely necessary for blocking the increasing firepower of flying arrows, axes, and magic. And then there is the combat. As primarily an archery-based game, In Death Unchained stands toe-to-toe with the best of the best in VR archery shooters, and very well could be the best. Its combination of great controller tracking along with challenging and realistic bow physics provides bow and arrow combat that is actually quite difficult at first, but oh so satisfying as you start to land headshots from 150 feet away. As you progress deeper and deeper into the game, you quickly realize that proper planning and pinpoint accuracy is the only way to survive past the 30-minute mark, especially when a single missed shot can easily mean death and starting all over again. This cruel and unforgiving challenge on its own could be frustrating, but once you realize that upon death you cash in your stats and begin to unlock and procure new achievements, the addiction sets in, for with each new accomplished achievement you unlock new and more powerful arrows, new abilities, and of course new and more formidable foes. More populated levels, harder challenges, better ammo, and of course boss fights await you, and yes, this game becomes your new master of just one more time. As many Quest headset players have come from the PSVR, it needs to be highlighted how superb the tracking here is on the Quest. Without the need for perfect camera placement or the concern about body position and cable management, I found the whole in-depth experience a much freer one, and as a result, made my success or failure feel much more skill-based than simply a case of me fighting the hardware. My only recommendation for Quest players is to ensure that you arc your hand out a bit when redrawing in succession after a prior shot, as I did find that simply reaching forward quickly could hit the Quest's blind spot, and would delay my drawing hand popping up while it re-established placement of the controller. The only other weapon apart from your trusty bow is the previously mentioned inclusion of the crossbow. The crossbow essentially feels like an automatic pistol when compared to the bow. It lacks the outside range of the bow, but can significantly bring down the game's difficulty level with its ability to fire off shots much more rapidly and without the associated arm fatigue. Personally, I found that after a few rounds, I missed the satisfaction found in the challenge of mastering the bow, and I believe most of you might feel the same. That being said, I appreciate the option, as it should be great for those that simply need a break from Robin Hooding it, or for those with physical limitations. Some of the enemy variety and behaviors will be instantly recognizable to fans of the Souls series, for most enemies can be seen standing and oblivious to your existence until you get too close or fire a wild arrow past their head. This oblivious pack mentality of enemies may seem odd to virgins of the Souls series, but trust me when I say be careful of poking the proverbial bear and biting off more than you bargained for. Also similar to the Souls game is the collection of loot upon the death of enemies. Usually this comes in the form of gold currency, but can also be found in power-ups coming in the form of new ammo and health. Earned gold is lost upon death, so it must be strategically used when you come across a teleportation beam of light. Here you are greeted by a market of purchase choices to aid you on your way, but choose wisely, as prices aren't cheap. A point that will quickly drive home the game loop to new players, as they realize they are better off to kill all the enemies they can instead of rushing ahead to the boss and just dying. A welcomed addition to the Quest version is the ability to save at markets, breaking the game into more bite-sized portions and giving your tired bow arm a break. And finally, that brings us to fun factor in my final review. Guys, I am rarely surprised by a game. I am the type that typically researches and obsesses about new and upcoming releases and knows pretty much exactly what to expect before diving into a game. In Death completely caught me off guard when it launched on the PSVR, as even though it had great reviews on the PCVR, I was completely sideswiped by the awesomeness that is this game. And yet again, I found myself pleasantly surprised on how successful this port has been to the Quest. In Death's biggest flaw is that I just wish there was more of it. I wish it was a deeper and more robust game filled with more level variation and perhaps some melee combat thrown in to complement the whole package. That being said, while maybe a bit single-minded, what is here is brilliant, addicting, and so much fun. As you guys may know, I hate number ratings and instead rate games on the basis of buy it, burn it, or wait on it. At $25, I could see some balking at the price for a fairly simple game loop based around one primary game mechanic, but for me, the skill-based gameplay, challenge, and fun factor makes this a recommended buy. And if you're a fan of roguelike games or the Souls series, this is an absolute no-brainer. Others may not enjoy the hardcore and punishing nature of this style of game, but I think you should still consider giving this game a go, even if you decide to wait for it to go on sale. Finally, for those who own this game on a previous platform and are wondering if it's still worth picking up, I'll leave you with some thoughts. When comparing it to the PSVR version, it comes down mainly to visuals versus gameplay, with the PSVR version being much more visually impressive, but dealing with clunky controls and camera setup, giving the Quest with its superior tracking and the wireless nature of the unit the win in the gameplay department. And of course, as usually is the case, the PCVR version is the best way to play the core game if you have the means. But, and here's the big but, previous developer So Far Studios has passed development over to Superbright, who is committed to future updates and DLC, but for only the Quest version of In Death. So, if you love this game or you think you might, consider that. And that's it for me, guys. If you like this video, please hit that like button. And if you'd like to see more PSVR content from me, please consider subscribing. And for video updates, make sure you hit that bell icon. I'll catch you guys on my next video.